Well, the wind howls off Jamaica Bay. A cold and frigid President's Weekend here at Aqueduct. It is still seen out on the clubhouse apron. There was not much action out there, save perhaps Saturday's card, because we canceled on both Sunday and Monday. But we're glad you're with us. The show goes on MSG+. It's the MIG, Richard Migliore, Andy Serling, Jason Blewett alongside. And we've got a lot to talk about on tonight's show, even though live racing in Aqueduct didn't happen on a regular basis throughout the weekend.
It's been hard for everybody. Anybody on the East Coast has been having trouble getting their racing going, and it's just been a very, very tough winter. But as Jason said, there's still plenty of action around the country.
Yeah, we're just going to do a little hopping around to different locales, but boy, it has been a tough winter on everybody.
Half a dozen tracks, 9 races spread throughout the show, but we begin, in fact, with older fillies and mares, and we start right here on Saturday's card on the inner track on a cold day. We sped up the post times because of the impending snowstorm that never happened, and here's the break of the Broadway for New York-bred fillies and mares.
The slow start was for Petty Mine. It was the longest shot on the board, or second longest shot on the board. It didn't affect her that much. Interestingly enough, Atlantic Smile was able to control in front. On a day it seemed it was very difficult to make up ground, and I believe, Richie, that makes the winner's performance, Isabel, that much more impressive. She also had a little bit of trouble early.
Yeah, I thought that made it very impressive because Junior Alvarado recognized that the track was playing kind to speed, and he tried to rush her forward to get position, and he basically got jammed a little bit, and she lost her action, and then he had to go to plan B and give her a chance.
I'll tell you something about Junior. I don't think there's a rider on this track who's riding better than he is, that seems more plugged in, and he's aggressive in the right spots. He's riding very well. He was dealt a tough hand with her, but she did all the work. She's just in very good form for her new connections. Bill Mott and Liana have her going very well.
Well, I agree with you, too. He's very in tune to what's going on, how the tracks are playing, how he needs to ride. And then when he was dealt that hand where he couldn't show as much speed as he was hoping to, he waited till he tipped out. He stayed in behind them until they made the turn. Then he came out. And obviously, this is a nice filly.
She's a very, very nice filly who has taken a step forward there and winning 2 straight. There were 3 horses in this race that were coming out of the same effort. Blythe was one, and we had talked about it, Trips and Traps, that a lot of us liked, thinking because she had trouble in there. She did not run back well off of the 16-day rest. Isabel, it didn't seem to matter.
Yeah, I think Blythe's one of those fillies that puts so much into every start that she just needs more time to recover. Where you look at Isabel, and I like watching the isolator replay of her. She looks so much like her father's Successful Appeal running, because he used to pin his ears so hard and was such an intense kind of horse. She has that same demeanor.
Yeah, no, this was a very nice effort for her coming back on the short rest. Now, it's interesting. We're going to look at a couple of other races for filly sprinters, and from a speed figure standpoint, this race, I believe, got an 86 buyer, 87 buyer. You want to say she had some trouble, she's a little bit against the track. I think that elevates her into the low 90s. It still has her a little bit behind the likes of Mary Meadow, who we'll see, as well as the Barbara Fritchie. But I think she is a filly that could have some more improve on her.
Well, if she does have a little forward movement, if she puts herself squarely in the conversation, because we've been talking about it in past weeks, how the filly and mare division sprinting is kind of wide open. Well, I thought we saw a couple of performances that basically signaled horses that are ready to try to step up and take charge of this division.
Can't disagree with that.
And even in the state-bred division, you've got the Artemis Agriterra and La Verdad coming back, and we'll see Princess Violet, in fact, in a couple races down the road running second in Saturday's Barbara Fritchie. But how about Blythe's older 5-year-old mare sister by Henny Hughes? Her name is Mary Meadow, and she is going to get the job done as the heavy, even money favorite. A nice 98 buyer for Mark Hennig and Javier Castellano, picking up the Hurricane Birdie near the top of the stretch.
Well, this was a race that was badly hurt by scratches. A scratch down to 5, and more than a party was even money along with Mary Meadow of a couple of allowance wins. But Mary Meadow is already a graded stakes winner. She's got graded stakes under her belt, and she's just a faster and better horse. The speed of more than a party didn't make any difference. Mary Meadow just does what she has to do and buries this field.
Well, she owned her by the half-mile post.
Yeah. This race was over.
It was over. You know, early in her career, Mary Meadow had so many seconds. I actually was one of the people that kind of doubted her will to win. Maybe she just kind of wanted to get their hang. But horses change, and obviously she's matured and gotten better, and now she's in a winning habit.
No, I agree. It's something we talk about a lot. You'll see these maidens, they're 0 for 10, 0 for 12, and they finally break through. Sometimes a light seems to go off, and they're able to put together back-to-back wins because they're good enough to win races. races, but for whatever reason, they're not really getting it done. I thought this filly, now she's a mare, I guess she's 5 years old now, she's really put it together. She's got 20, she's on the board 22 out of 25 times in all of her races. She always shows up.
She's solid. It's a credit to Mark Hennig as well. And a different surface, but I had flashbacks in watching the Hurricane Birdie to last year on the turf down at Gulfstream with Baffle Me, who was an older turf filly and mare from Mark Hennig, who the longer she raced, the older she got, the better she was.
No, I agree. Mark does a very good job with these horses, bringing them along, and I think that's shown as his strong suit as a trainer, some patience with horses and getting them to improve with time. And to me, that's the mark of a good trainer.
Oh, I agree. I mean, we talk about it all the time with Shug McGahee, how his horses get better with time. And Mark seems to have a way with the ladies. It seems like he's done so well with fillies and mares over the year. And now I'm sure there had to be a conversation. I mean, this mare's 5 now. Do we race her another season, or do we start thinking about who we're going to breed her to? Well, it looks like that at 5, she might be in the best form of her career.
Absolutely agree, Richie. And there's a lot of big races coming up, and she's now made about $650,000, a little bit more than that. And that's a lot of money. And there's some real money on the table. This is a horse that, if things go well, it's not impossible she's a millionaire by the end of the year.
Yeah, for sure. And Javier Castellano already a multiple millionaire in 2015. $2.5 million in purse earnings and counting, over $700,000 as we tape this show in front of Erod Ortiz, who's second in the standings. Let's get you up to the frigid temperature and a gray, cold Saturday at Laurel Park in Maryland. And we look at one of the highlights every President's Weekend with the Barbara Fritchie, the number 10 shipping in for Jerry Hollendorfer. She had a tough start.
She did have a bad start in this race, and it cost her any chance because not only was she compromised, but also the pace was fair, but the race was dominating the front end. And I give Cara Manos a lot of credit here by seizing control of the race, as opposed to horses like Best Behavior, who ran last in here. But she appeared to have speed on paper, and she did not get an aggressive ride.
No, she didn't. And Cara Manos used his filly enough to get over and get positioned the way he wanted it. And then he was just in control of the race. And as you can see her in the head-on coming towards us, she's got what I thought was an extension blinker, and I've since learned it's actually a clear isinglass cup because she has an eye problem.
Well, I'll tell you what, she doesn't have a problem running. She's gotten very good. I don't blame Jose Ortiz at all here. I think he was dealt a bit of a bad hand getting the rail with Princess Violet. She broke fairly well from in there, but it's tough from that rail position unless you've got a ton of speed to establish position. She isn't that fast early, and if she had had an outside post, I think she could have been in a better stalking position. I'm not saying she would have won, but I think she would have gotten a more comfortable trip because the truth is she never stopped coming.
No, she didn't. And actually, when Lady Sibilia showed that, like, turn a foot and kind of put a little separation, she had every right to cave in there. Mentally, it takes a lot out of a horse. She kept coming again. I thought he did everything right, though, leaving the chute. He rode her out of there to make sure he got forward position. He came out off the fence to try to give himself options. And it was just the way the race fell with that post that, gave him a little bit of a difficult trip.
That post and also not having much speed, let's talk a little bit about Sam's sister.
Yeah, well, she's going to get squeezed. You're going to see they're going to come out of the gate, and she didn't break.
She breaks a little slow.
A little bit slow. And then, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it was enough to put her in a position, and it's so different, the East Coast tracks from the West Coast tracks. The spray from the kickback is so much different here that I'm sure she never experienced that.
And is that something that might intensify on a very cold day where they were right around freezing or a little below it in Maryland?
Oh, absolutely. It comes back. It's hitting you like gravel.
And also, let's look at her last 2 races. She won the Grade 1 La Brea. She won the Grade 2 Santa Monica. And on the surface of things, obviously, those are impressive wins. Well, first of all, she got 87 and 88 Beyer figures. These other horses are horses running in the mid to high 90s. So she's slower than them from a speed figure standpoint. But also, here are the quarter and half fractions of her last 2 races. The La Brea, 21 and 4, 43 and 4. 22 flat, 43 and 4. So she's got these huge paces going out in front of her against horses that, frankly, Grade 1s or Grade 2, they're not as good as the horses in this race. And then she faces a more moderate pace, one that's at least fairer for the horses up front. And not surprisingly, she's not able to run them down. The reality is, you have to ask yourself, maybe Princess Violet should have shipped out for the La Brea, a race she could have run as a 3-year-old, because the way that race was running, as good as she is, she might have won it.
Yeah, well, it's a very good point. And you got to think, too, also, she ran into a filly in raging form in Lady Sibilia, who loves Laurel, has home court advantage, a good mare.
No question about it.
6 for 11, in fact, on the main track down at Laurel, but we will see Jose Ortiz get a stakes win, a perfect ride coming up after a short break on this edition of the Racing Report. Welcome back here on MSG Plus. It's the National Racing Report from the chilly Aqueduct Racetrack in South Ozone Park, Queens. We get back to it a new week. In fact, the 4-day live racing week begins at Aqueduct on Thursday, February 19th. Just note the change with Aqueduct Insider with myself and the MIG will be on MSG Network, not MSG Plus. And look, the Gotham warm weather, spring at Aqueduct, right around the corner. In fact, 2.5 weeks out from that Saturday, March 7, Gotham Day card. First post, 1:20 p.m. And look, guys, the 3-year-old preps really start to pick up next weekend with both the Fountain of Youth and the Risen Star.
No, I mean, obviously, we're in a big time for the 3-year-old preps. This weekend was kind of a respite front. We saw some other races. We'll see a race on Synth at the end of the day, but the Fountain of Youth and Risen Star will answer some more questions.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, it seems like we saw some bigger names make the work tab recently. Obviously, some of Todd Pletcher's horses, Daredevil and the like, and then American Pharaoh turned in what I heard was a good work on the West Coast.
Yeah, apparently he has had 2 works now. They both look good. I'll believe it when I see him on the racetrack.
No, we hope he's doing okay. We hope he sticks around. But we head back down to Maryland, and Jose Ortiz doing a good job. Was second in the Barbara Fritchie. Earlier in the day, got the money in the Racing Media Stakes with the gray Lunar Surge for George Weaver.
Keep an eye on her. She's the gray who's third to last on the inside in those orange silks, because I got to tell you something, Richie, this was a sensational run.
It really was. And the first big move was right there, where he made sure he got all the way up in there to hold his position. You can't be complacent there, or you can't hedge your bets. You've got to commit. He committed, he got in that spot, and that set up the rest of the trip.
No, I got to tell you, I mean, he won this race on this filly, and this was one of the best races, if not the best race she's ever run, and we've seen her hang a little bit. She had run just a couple of weeks ago here in New York in a race that she finished third. Maybe she's a horse that's more comfortable moving inside of horses, because, boy, she has no trouble splitting horses, diving down on the inside. The winner, a Marty Wilson horse from Florida, she looked home free.
Well, she's the runner-up, Fleury's Island, and this is an old Intertrack exacta with Fleury's Island, who spent last winter on the inner with Bill Mott, and here you go with George Weaver in the right place at the right time, and this mare by Malibu Moon gets the stakes victory.
Yeah, when it blows open that wide, too, it's just so comfortable. And I know Sheldon Russell on the horse that wound up third was in that spot, vacated it, and that's what happens. When you're the guy making the first run, you've got to make the decision, and then when that horse drifts, you go, why didn't I stay there? But it's so easy to say in hindsight.
I agree, but the problem is, I don't think he would have won anyway. I just think the winner just had more
I don't
horse.
think so either, but it's just funny. I know from a jockey's perspective, you vacate a spot, another horse comes through that spot, and you go, why didn't I stay there? But obviously, hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, and I just feel like the best horse won the race. And listen, she won by a length, but Jose was so confident in doing what he did, and the filly complied for him and got through her mare, I should say, and through that hole. But as you pointed out, it was that decisive move around the half to 3/8 pole when he gets his position on the inside and makes sure that he doesn't get squeezed out.
Yeah, you see so many riders make that mistake. They don't commit, and they kind of in between, and they don't get all the way up in there, and then they get shuffled back out of there.
Right.
Going into the turn, you have to either be all the way in or all the way out.
Nope, Jose Ortiz was all the way in at the wire and got the money for George Weaver. Good to see some New York connections getting it done down on the Barbara Fritchie undercard. We give up, at least for the time being, the cold gray skies of the East Coast. And how about the sunshine in Southern California? Let's get out to Santa Anita with the Santa Maria Stakes. We'll pick it up at the half-mile pole. Winner puts in a sustained 4-wide sweep. Kaleem Shah is 1-2 at this point with his 2 Baffert horses who are eye to eye.
He's 1-2 here, but he's nowhere near him at the finish. And this is a division that outside of Untapable, and who knows, I know she worked Beholder, but who knows when she's going to show up again. It's wide open outside of horses like that. And maybe this horse, Warren's Benita, who had showed some signs finishing second at Los Alamitos, maybe she's going to be the best horse out west without Beholder running.
No, especially, I mean, this was impressive. She was wide every step of the second turn. She did make that long, sustained run that you alluded to, Jason, and she kept on. I mean, she was very resolute. I mean, you see the entry kind of chewing on each other. Not the greatest use of an entry.
No, I don't disagree with him. I don't know if they were good enough, but I was surprised to see those 2 horses going at each other in the backstretch, because they obviously realized that they had the same silks. This horse, Warren's Benita, she's just a better horse. The horse Girl in that song, who we had talked about winning her last start, one of the preps in this division out in California, we knew when we did that show, I think it was just Richie and I, that she won because nobody else did any more running. When the going got a little tougher, she was totally ineffectual.
Yeah, no, she maybe we alluded to it that day, just not fast enough. But this filly that won it was pretty good, and I actually liked the way she was stride down through the wire in spite of making that long sustained run.
No, I agree. She had a nice run in her. The race, I think, got a 94 Beyer, so she's not at the highest of levels now, but you know what? In fact, it wasn't a race just to compare it to Barbara Fritchie at 7 furlongs that got a 99. She's a little slower in those horses, but considering what's running now, and you've got a horse like that horse of Larry Jones's that kind of was fortunate to win the ladies at Sam Houston,
Sam
probably
Houston.
going out for that race. What is her name again? I want to say...
I'm drawing a
Something
blank.
Bat. Something Bat. She's not that good either. I think this horse is better, and I believe it's the Santa Margarita's the grade
It's the
one,
next
though,
one,
already.
yeah.
Well, we'll stay with the older fillies and mares, and by the way, Warren's Venita by a $1,000 California side affirmative. She has banked over $500,000 for trainer Craig Lewis and at the top of her game. But let's get to the Midwest, Oaklawn Park. Well, they canceled their Monday card with the Southwest. That's a race we will have for you hopefully next week on the National Racing Report. But let's check out and pick up the Bayakoa from the starting gate, Mufaja. She's your winner, and she's second to last in the blue Shadwell silks.
Always happy to see our friend Danny Pites get it done. This is a filly, I think she's a 4-year-old now, that's always shown a little bit of run. This was a race, though, Richie, that featured a pretty contested pace.
Yeah, I mean, you could see the first 6 or 7 horses were there in a few lengths of each other. A couple of them were caught wide. It was contentious. And then she just dropped out the back, kind of in her own little world, got in a nice little rhythm. I mean, it looked like she had a lot to do, but I think she had the right pace to run at.
And we saw Escobar riding her, and Escobar, of course, rode here last winter. It's nice to see him doing okay down at Oaklawn Park. You know, Gold Medal Dancer, who's the horse forcing the pace 3 wide, she'll open up in the stretch, and I don't know if she's good enough. Obviously, the pace had a bit of an effect on her. I think from a pace-based situation, she might have run as well as anybody in here. She only loses the race by a neck and a half length at the end. She may have just been a little bit fresh off the layoff, and I like the fact that Quinones, who rode her, didn't get in her way.
Yeah, and he wasn't asking her to do it.
Right.
I mean, and he wasn't fighting with her. He was just being very quiet, and what she did basically on her own. And what do we talk about all the time? We want to see riders allow horses to do what comes easy to them. So I don't blame him for that, but I think she got a little bit tired and might have needed the race because it looked like she might be on her way to victory and maybe hit the wall a little at the 16th ball.
I agree. She appears to be going fairly well here, and he gives her a bit of a breather. I mean, she got a nice, the third quarter was 25 seconds, but the winner, Mufaja, is pretty good, and she just gets a head of steam on the outside. Flashy American. It's nice to see she's still capable of running some decent races. I like this horse, Mufaja. I just don't know how good she is in the grand scheme of things, but you know what? She got a 95 Beyer figure, which is 1 point higher than Santa Maria, so they're all sort of in the same grouping, these kind of horses, and we'll see where they go moving forward.
Well, it sounds like the Azari in early March is on the radar for Mufaja with Danny Pites, who's now 5 for 12 and 4 for 6 at Oaklawn Park. And obviously that's the big local prep on March 14th for the Apple Blossom in April.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch trainers with their horses, what they're doing with Untappable. Because what is Untappable going to do? Is she going to run down to Prep and Fairgrounds? And you've got the Grade 1 Apple Blossom, I think, second week of March, of April.
Yeah.
Then 3 weeks later on Derby Day, the Grade 1 La Troyenne. Now, I doubt that Untappable's running in both, and it wouldn't surprise me she'll use one to prep towards our $1 million Ogden Phipps on Belmont Day. And you imagine trainers, you look at these horses, think about Todd Pletcher and Bobby Flay with the Sophie or Dame Dorothy.
Right.
What you're going to do with her. And they all want to try to win a Grade 1, but they're also thinking about Untappable, and everybody's going to want to go in whichever Grade 1 she doesn't go in.
Well, if I was a trainer, that's how I would plan it. Wherever she goes, I'm going the other direction.
On the other hand, it's not, you don't, as Alan Jerkins, I think, said, you don't not run because of one horse, and it's never terrible to finish second. And you'll see them in the Ogden Phipps for $1 million, where you get $200,000 per second. But you do think with those 2 races, they're going to be dodging, and the other one will be a better race.
I want to try to get my Grade 1 out of the way, and then if I got to hook up with her somewhere on the way.
I'll tell you, you mentioned her, though, and
Untappable?
even Untappable, and at this point, even in mid-February, it's exciting to just think about her coming back as a 4-year-old, and maybe she even steps up her game further, being by Tapit, and who knows?
Who knows? She could be one of the best horses in the country, an exciting horse in the horizon. But there are some other good horses out there, and you don't want to forget about a horse like Dame Dorothy, because I think she's every bit as good as the horses we're running, if not better, and it'll be interesting to see what route they take with her.
But it is nice, too, to see these horses come back at 4 and 5 because we're getting to see the best of them.
And we'll have a 5-year-old, in fact, who's trained by Dame Dorothy's trainer, Todd Pletcher. He will win our next race on the National Racing Report. We're staying at Oaklawn Park, and we're looking back at Golden Lad this past weekend on MSG+. It's the Racing Report. We are back approaching the 8th hole. In fact, we've got our little pick 6 down. We've got one rolling pick 3 remaining on a windy and blustery Monday here at the Big A. I'll be checking out those Gulfstream Park simulcasts a bit later in the afternoon. But we're glad the MIG, Andy, and Jason are here with all of you, and we still have some action to talk about, guys.
We do have some good races to talk about. Looking forward to these races, particularly looking forward to talking about this Essex, because the Essex is an interesting race coming up, especially because Rydon Curlin was coming back, and we had shown his impressive, I don't think you were here, 6 furlong return. I don't think he ran badly in losing here. I just think he ran to a horse, Golden Lag, that ran better.
I think he ran better, might have worked out a little better trip as Rydon Curlin's going to have to steady a little bit as Golden Lag crosses over. I don't think it was enough to warrant a disqualification, although John Court did claim foul. But it kind of took him out of better position. I think that's the way to put it.
I think that's a reasonable point. He still gets pretty good position in here. And it seems like the pace was fair. It certainly wasn't blistering, but it wasn't a dramatically slow pace. And this is a horse, Golden Lad, who's coming out of that prep. I think the House Hope.
Well, it's the House Hope, and he flatters. I mean, he certainly flatters Lee in Constitution, obviously, or Lee in Confrontation.
It also makes you believe, and Lee did come back with a very good second behind Constitution and Dawn, that pace in the House Hope, because you can't believe any of these paces coming out of that mile shoot at Gulfstream Park. The times, the paces, they're all very, very dubious. It makes you think it was a faster pace than it looked on paper.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And you think about the quality of that field when you talk about the likes of Lee and how well he comported himself there. He's shown an affinity for Oaklawn, winning this race last year.
The Razorback, actually,
last year.
Oh,
the Razorback last year?
Regardless.
All right, so he has won over the course. And Rydon Curlin, let's be fair. I mean, he had the one prep, was very, impressive coming from well back 6 furlongs. He might have got a little tired, too.
I think he did. I absolutely agree, Richie. I think it's a classic second off a layoff, stretching out, and sometimes they don't run as well, especially when he ran as well visually did the first time. But listen, I think he got a 93 buyer when he won the 6 furlong race. He still gets a buyer of close to 100 in this race, a 98, a 99. So he took a step forward. He just lost to a horse that ran a little bit better than he did, and I like Rydon Curlin. I think I don't think he's good enough to win a race like the Met Mile.
Right.
But I think he's the kind of horse that could get a small piece of it. They're going to obviously point to the Oaklawn Park handicap, but I'll tell you something. If I were them, I'd be thinking about the Grade 1 Carter. I would love to see him turning back to 7 furlongs.
Well, the way he finished in that 6 furlong race, and he had such an intense finishing kick, you'd have to think 7/8 would really hit him in the wheelhouse.
And there's a lot of races to think about. Here's a race for him. They should be thinking about the Forego. Don't make the mistake the connections of Bourbon Courage made, where they kept running him a mile and 1/8. They kept doing it. Yeah. Think about the idea of turning back a little bit, because I'll tell you, the best chance this horse has of winning a Grade 1, I'll bet you, is going shorter than longer.
I like what you're thinking, and I agree. And he shows the ability to run through traffic. He'll go anywhere, and he's got to turn a foot. I would like to see them try it, too.
And he's a likable colt. 4-year-old by Curlin, one of only a couple horses that competed in all 3 legs of the Triple Crown. It's good to have him back.
And also, he's got cool connections. I mean, it's one of the few horses the trainer has, so you like to see him do well. Sure. He's a good horse. He's just got to be in the right spots.
We head back down to Maryland. We'll finish off the action, in fact, at Laurel on Saturday's card with the John B. Campbell handicap. We already looked at Horatio Karamanos on the front end, winning the Barbara Fritchie. Completely different tactics in this one, coming from way, way back in a blanket finish.
Yeah, it looks like Ciro is cruising along, but it's tough to maintain like that in front. And this was a race where the pace basically fell apart, and we saw a blanket finish, Richie.
Yeah, it really did. And conversely, and I like Horatio Karamanos as a rider, and I think he rides tremendous down. He really understands the tracks. He didn't commit to his spot going to turn and got shuffled back a bit, and then had to come out
So you're making the move around now,
Now then he had to swing out, and, where we talked about Jose Ortiz, we gave him kudos for getting up in there. Horatio kind of got shuffled back, and then this mare finished well under strong urging to get the money.
No, I agree. It's actually it's a gelding.
Gelding,
but I agree. I mean, he was resolute in winning. He's between horses now. It's just not always the most comfortable spot. And as you pointed out, that trouble he had in getting shuffled back really hurt him, and he still was able to get it done, albeit in a blanket finish.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about the Phillies,
The other race,
the
right.
other race,
No,
and
it's tough to keep track of them.
This is a cool horse, though. I mean, I mentioned Warren's Veneta being by $1,000 stallion taking the race out at Santa Anita. Well, how about Mary Epler, who picked up this PA bred? He's a 5-year-old gelding by Eavesdropper. Claimed him in the summer of 2013 in July for $16,000, and this win puts him well over $400K, and he's now 10 for 32 in his career. Pretty cool.
19 times first and second. Eavesdropper, Scotty Schulhofer, I want to say.
Scotty Schulhofer. And if my
That's right.
memory is correct, I think he was a half to AP Indy. Now, the mare had been
Wow.
very old. Weekend Surprise.
Yes. Yeah.
The mare was
I'm
very
sure you're
old
right.
when
Good call.
he
He's
sold.
sharp.
But he wasn't a very good horse. Pretty average, Eavesdropper.
Okay, I have a King Mambo as the sire. That would make sense because King Mambo stood at Lane's End.
Oh, there you go. Let's wrap up the action. We head out to Northern California. Golden Gate Fields, a rare trip for us. 10 Kentucky Derby points to the winner in Saturday's El Camino Real Derby. Big field on the Topeta, and I'll send it to you guys from the gate.
Here's what I liked about this race, Richie. Even on a weekend when we didn't have any real major 3-year-old preps, and the only one was this race on synthetic, and I don't think this is going to have any effect on the Kentucky Derby, and Metaboss, his connections smartly even know he's more of a turf horse. I still thought this horse ran pretty well.
Well, he really did, but the last 8th and 11 and change, more like a turf race,
Yeah, right.
turn of foot. But he was impressive and worked his way in through a fairly big field, some traffic, and I was thinking back. I ran second in this race in 1986, the first time Alex Solis won it on a horse named Snow Chief.
He was on Snow
He
Chief.
He was
on
on Snow
Snow
Chief.
Chief,
I was
right.
on a horse named Badgerland.
You were on Badgerland?
Badgerland.
Badgerland is a funny horse. You won't remember this, Jay, but Richie will. Badgerland was a huge trip horse coming out of Kentucky Derby that year. Now, of course, Snow Chief came back and won that Preakness that year.
Yeah.
But Jorge Velasquez was riding riding Badgerland, and he was like 10 wide around the turn. A Wayne Lucas horse. He was a good horse. I don't know if he ever ran again after that Preakness. He sort of fell off the map.
Yeah, I don't think he did, and it's interesting. Georgie Velasquez was riding everything. First call for Wayne then, and I would pick up basically the table scraps. Actually won a lot of nice races that way.
Right.
But I rode him to be second.
Wow, that's cool.
Snow Chief in this race.
And actually, 4 Hall of Fame riders. I think a field of 9. You had Russell Bays, Mike Smith, Kent DeSormo, and Alex Solis, who wins the race. Pretty cool, actually.
No, that is cool, and this horse puts in, you see him start to make that big run. You knew someone was going to make the run from behind because there were a lot of horses contending towards the front. The horse in between horses, the 5, that rider, Hernandez, is looking for a seam to get through. He really never finds a comfortable seam, but he does a nice job of coming through and sort of sucking up for second down the inside.
Yeah.
But there's no denying the winner, Metabus, got the right trip and just circled the field for Alex Solis.
And the way he finished, it did look like a turf race. If they just spray painted that green, it would have been a turf race.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think he's as good, though, as Bolo, who, of course, I think is trying the dirt, apparently, on Big Cap Day in California. He's a turf horse.
He is a turf horse. 120 post this coming Thursday. We're at 120 first post at Aqueduct from here on out for the time being. Gotham Day 2.5 weeks away. And on next weekend's National Racing Report, Fountain of Youth, the Risen Star. We hope to have the Busher in the evening attire right here from the Big A. But that'll do it. The buzzer has sounded. Always a good time with these guys on the set. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time right here on MSG Plus.